so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. My name is Christian D. Evans, your host. And guys, we have someone very special that we wanted to jump in because obviously marketing is a huge aspect of your business, right? Whether you're at six figures, 750,000, and you want to scale to several $1 million, we brought in this amazing several $1 million business owner, marketing agency owner here that is just cutting edge on all of the stuff that he's doing. And we wanted to just bring in some really cool content, but also what he's doing in the paid ads, SEO, just some fun stuff that he's been able to help implement strategies that have been a massive impact in his clients results. He is the owner of Twiz.io, as well as several other companies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my man Lucas. How you doing, my man?
Doing well. Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man. Hey, I know we only got a few minutes with you. We're both busy jumping off and doing other things, but let's just dive into it. Tell me, like, what's your story? How did you get into the marketing side of things? And then what kind of strategies are you using and implementing that are you seeing really effective right now? I know a lot of companies had to pivot from the old side of things to more relevant things, definitely after COVID and so forth. So love to get some of those strategies, man.
100%. Yeah, thanks for asking. So we have pivoted into more SaaS-based software. We've also pivoted into more business process operations and eventually automation or robotic process automation. But really what we've learned is that finding very talented people across the globe and helping match them to very hungry and fast-growing organizations is an incredibly good opportunity for scale. And so that's what we've been doing, and it's been working really well. So that's really our focus. And then on top of that, obviously, like the software that I'm building and we're rolling out is going to really help with, continuing to scale all those efforts simultaneously. So.
Which makes perfect sense. So let me ask you regarding, obviously, because with business owners, right, as they start scaling, as they start producing, it is about leverage. And you have to find the who that knows how to create certain things, right? And so my question, pay top dollar for that talent, right? So there's a lot that goes into it. And I know you just kind of briefly, talked about that's kind of what you do. How do you do that, man? And how do you really dial in that process and really automate that?
Well, the way I kind of look at everything is do things that are very difficult at first. I'm not even just talking about like a hard work perspective. I mean more from do things that are very difficult to replicate and require a good amount of skill to break into a certain market. So for instance, we bypass people, who are middleman or woman for talent overseas or in other states of the United States, and we just go direct. And that's something that obviously takes a lot of time for different organizations. And because we're doing that arbitrage where we are not having to pay a fee out to people and we become the middleman and we're not just paying a middleman who then gets us that talent, that's something that's always going to be in demand, right? Because a large organization is always going to need people. They also understand the costs of hiring really good talent because obviously everyone knows the prices of different employees, et cetera. So they're willing to pay more for different types of talent, and they don't have the time and resources to build out things on their own a lot of the times. So that is something that we've spent a lot of efforts on. And then once you built something that has a really good moat, is obviously like the financial term for it, that's really hard for people to replicate, then that's when you start building software to make that process even smoother, make it even faster growth, and just accelerate everything at a faster and faster pace or rate. So that's really what we're focusing on, is just find opportunities that are very hard to replicate and then entrenching our moat with that opportunity. So that way it's difficult for other people to copy.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. And so let's kind of dial into because I think building a business is like certain pillars, right? And it's the same thing with hiring, people and processes. Which positions or which categories do you focus on first to say, okay, hey, we're going to focus on this that's going to create the best return on investment right off the bat, and then of course we start, filtering the other individuals on the bus, if you will.
Yeah. So what kind of processes you mean?
Well, I mean, as in like which CMO, is it more the marketing people that you start, hiring very quickly that will produce the best result, or is it more of like the operation side, or is it like customer service, success management? I'm just curious, which category, which avenue do you focus on first for a business?
Good question. We try to focus on, there's a lot of different schools of thought on this, but we try to focus on individuals that and roles that would typically be the most painful for an organization to A, find, and B, deliver on internally. So what we found that is lead generation, fully end-to-end sales reps. The reason for that is because if you look at it, I know because I work with some really large companies, and I used to think this wasn't the case, but I realized over time that it was. Things like cold calling and cold emailing are actually the best kind of lead generation possible. And the largest companies, that's what they're focusing on. All of the $100 million plus valuation companies I've worked with, they get a lot of their leads obviously inbound from partners and stuff, but a lot of their leads are outbound through calling, cold emailing, right? So that is something a lot of people don't want to deal with. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do it internally. They don't even have the skills a lot of time to do it. And it's something that's hard for people to replicate. So, and even if you are good at it, right? Sales is something that's scalable. It's something where you could add a new sales rep and you're going to get X or Y result. If you hire a new marketing person, you're going to get a lot of results, but it's something you don't need to keep scaling up. Whereas BDRs, you keep scaling up as you grow. And if you want to grow faster, you get more BDRs, right? And so that's what we focus on. Full end-to-end sales rep, do phone calls, do emailing, do LinkedIn messaging, and in a compliant way that's compliant with all US and international regulations in order to get, and that's the other thing, complying with those regulations is another thing that's difficult for people to get over, or hurdle to get over. So for instance, you have to comply with like the do not call list. And if you're not in compliance with that, you get fined a lot of money. So if you don't know how to navigate that, and you don't have the right kind of legal team to navigate that and make sure you're staying out of hot water, you also have to go spend money to get all those things. So it's like you could pay us and we'll make sure you don't actually have to do all that heavy lifting and work on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I see the value that you're bringing, because I understand just on my own standpoint, when I was building my business, scaled it to 10 million, I had a lot of BDRs and I had to personally train a lot of those BDRs, develop them, find them, create them, train them, and I had to create the systems and processes. And what's interesting is that someone like you would have saved me hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars, but also a ridiculous amount of time, because now I didn't have to go and find them, filter them, all that stuff. Because I'll tell you, BDRs are very tough. A lot of people, they just want warm leads coming in, close them, boom. And that sounds wonderful and beautiful, but the return on ad spend is just, it's tough. You got to make sure the margins work. But the cold outreach, it definitely works and produces, but it's hard to find people that are willing to work like that. And I know people in the United States are willing to work like that, but I know it's a little bit tougher. Other people in other countries and cultures, they tend to be the ones that really love that kind of work ethic. But let me ask you, I mean, where have you seen that same kind of trajectory, or where do you find your BDRs, or do you just have a great network of high top talent all the time?
Yeah, so that is the key, right? Is we've obviously grown quite a bit this last year, and we're on pace to grow more this year, but part of that growth is really just fully being able to capture as much value as is out there in the market. And one of the things we were doing incorrectly, we didn't realize at the time, we thought would be very valuable for enterprises, was we were landing these large contracts with enterprises. And these enterprises wanted to scale up with us even more. They were like, oh, we're so excited to scale with you guys. These are $100 million, $1 billion valuation companies. And what happened was when we started to scale with them, we prided ourselves on having 100% US based labor. We were like, it's 100% US based. We want to bring jobs to the United States. We felt like that was a valuable thing. I'm not really one way or the other on it, but I do think that, we're becoming more globalized. It's also good to focus a bit on, jobs in the States as well. I think both are important, but it's good to have jobs in the States too. That was my theory. I wasn't super tied to it. I just felt like it was something that'd be a good thing to do. And then over time though, I realized that, because I wasn't super tied to it, because I honestly didn't really care one way or the other where we got people from, I did realize that the enterprises didn't care about that statement, really, honestly. The people we worked with, they didn't care as much about having people in the States as I thought they would, right? I was assuming that they would, and that they would want people in the States, mainly because of not anything to do with language or accents or culture, all the stuff people say. I don't think that's really true. I think the reason I was thinking it'd be more important to have people in the States was simply because if you're in the States, it's really easy to sue somebody if something goes wrong. So I figured, okay, my people are in the States, so if something happens, I know who these people are. I can go fly to Missouri or fly to Florida, and I can actually talk to them and handle any kind of situations that might arise. I thought the enterprises want that too. But actually what the enterprises want is they want the most cost-effective labor with the highest incentives for that labor. and the best work ethic possible. And obviously, if you're in another country, again, it has nothing to do with, I don't think, culture or any differences at all. Honestly, it's just the fact that the USD to other currencies, the discrepancy is so extreme that if you pay someone the same amount in India or the Philippines, they're just going to work so much harder than someone in the States because they're making so much more money relative to their local currency. And so it's very difficult to find that kind of incentive structure here in the States for those rates. And so all these enterprises, we made it all the way to the final rounds where we were working with them. They had like us and one other vendor. And this was the story 3 times over the last year. All 3 times we could have scaled these up to $1 million per month contracts, right? But all 3 times they went to the next person simply because we were getting them deals, we were closing stuff, but they just said, look, this other vendor has people in South Africa, has people in India, has people in the Philippines, and you just can't compete. You can't get as many meetings as these guys or close as many deals because they have every $5,000 they can get a team of 5 people, right? And or 3 people, just or incentivize one person to just absolutely crush it. And so that was the problem on us. So I don't think it matters where somebody's located. I don't think it matters any of the things that people talk about all the time in regards to international work. I think it's literally just the discrepancy between the USD versus other currencies is so extreme. It's very difficult to incentivize people in the US to do as good a job as people abroad, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and that's what I found as well, because that's really what it comes down to, incentivizing. And what I found very interesting now, again, this might just be culture, but with the United States, we become very warm and like very generic. I shouldn't even say that, but it's more just like sales teams just really want the warm leads. That's it. Very kind of just very persnickety on what they want. And the reality is there's a lot of people, culturally all over the world that really are willing to hustle, and really, dial their craft in because they are hungry for it and they really want it. And so I think that's just really a very interesting perspective. And how long, I'm just curious, because obviously that has happened to you and you guys had to pivot. And like you said, that was a limiting belief that you were holding on to. Hey, we just have US people because that's what you want. And the reality, that was a limiting belief that was holding you back. How long did that take you as a business to pivot and realize, okay, let's remove that and let's start going international and going global on that?
So it happened recently where we had a large contract, the same thing, and they loved us. We were getting, $100,000 plus deals closed for these clients. But again, it was just the same thing. I asked them, I said, look, you said you liked us. You said you loved us. No hard feelings. But what was the reason that this other company, like, where are they located? Because I was just curious, like, are they located in the States? And they're like, no, they're in South Africa. And obviously South Africa's currency is different in discrepancy too than the United States. So I was like, crap, it happened again. And so it's been recent where we've decided we have to completely shift to this new model in order to compete on the world stage. And also, like I said, it doesn't there's just a lot of misconceptions I had with how enterprises would want to interact with talent that are just not true anymore. I mean, the world is way too intertwined there. Even with all the stuff that's going on today, we still have a huge impact of globalism and internationalism. I mean, everything is hyper connected. So it's just very difficult for an enterprise to wrap their brain around the idea that there's a difference. And I actually personally don't think there is much of a difference. I just think that that the enterprises wanted that, but I don't. Now I know that that's not what they want. They don't actually care.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. And that limiting belief that a lot of people may or may not have, and now it's totally basically disintegrated. Now let's talk a little bit about hiring and firing, because I think this is very important. BDRs, just from my experience, I know that I hire them very quickly because at the end of the day, BDRs is really a matter of the results, right? You could tell me about, ABC, what you've been, what you've done, whatever. It's a different job requirement. And a lot of times I have like a 2-week kind of period and I realize, okay, are they able to produce and perform? If not, then I can basically fire them very quickly because I can figure that out very quickly within a 2-week period. I'm just curious, with your strategy and with the people that you have a better network than I do regarding BDRs. So you probably have higher quality, performers, BDRs individuals. But what does that process look like?
For hiring and firing them?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
So we We got our metrics. Luckily, I mean, this is partly why we spent the last year shifting from, because what happened was we grew a lot through our lead gen process, and then people started asking us, "Can you do what you did for yourselves for us?" And then we did, and we sort of started to scale that up, and we started to spend the last year really focusing on doing our own process for other people. Now, when we were going through that process, we've realized that there are some metrics, even though we were doing stuff really well, there's some metrics that actually matter way more than others. The key metric I've seen across all enterprises we work with is for any setter, anybody who's booking appointments, they have to book 1 to 1.5 meetings per day. That is like the golden number. Like everybody I've worked with has that quota, 1 to 1.5 meetings per day. So you're booking 20 to 30 meetings a month, basically, right? Here's the thing. It is actually way higher than I used to have it. Because when I had it, I had like maybe one BDR who would come pretty close to that, but I had a team of like 4 or 5. And what I've realized now is it's actually way better. So like here's the thing that people don't really talk about. I wish I had known earlier. Where you make millions of dollars in profit from a services-based agency is, and this sounds really commonsensical, but it's when you figure out how to do the exact same thing, but with 30% less people or 40% less people. That's when you start making a ton of money. It's not just by closing deals, because anybody can close deals, right? So my thing now is I will keep a super exclusive and lean team. If they're not booking one meeting every day after the first week, I will let them go. Or I'll reduce their hours to 0 and just call them out of reserves whenever I need it, if I want somebody at any point in time. And I'll just have a constant stream of people who will be booking, one meeting every day. And then if they don't hit it, we move them somewhere else. Now, the other KPI I have is they have to be producing one account every 40 hours they work. So minimum 4 accounts per month, minimum, right? They have to. That's like the quota. So that's what we focus on. That's how we hire and fire, and it's pretty quick. It's pretty quick when we fire people. So
I love that. That makes perfect sense. And yeah, it does seem very common sense. However, though, it is like a ninja kind of strategy that helps long term. So tell me as well, what are some of the metrics in order to get that one? What kind of metrics do you keep for the BDRs in order for them to ensure success for themselves, right? Having that one meeting booked a day. Are they pushing 100, 300 phone calls, or what does that look like?
Oh, it's 100 calls. 100 calls a day. That's the number that I've heard from my from the enterprises that we work with. It's 100 calls a day. That's the sweet spot.
Okay.
And it's just a number that, and everything. So here's the thing. Everything revolves around the calls. So sorry, I'm just moving my charger. My laptop's about to die. But everything revolves around the calls. So if you're not getting the 100 calls in, then you have to basically stop everything you're doing and get the calls in. But if you have free time after you're doing the phone calls, then what I have them do is send cold email follow-ups and do LinkedIn outreach. But it's in that order. And a lot of times what I'll do for LinkedIn, which we're actually ramping up even more now, is I have a shared, this is actually a good growth hack I've learned recently. I think people should probably try doing, but I have a shared Hootsuite account. And I have my reps post 1 or 2 pieces of content every single day on LinkedIn. And then and that helps create more reach for their account when they're doing LinkedIn outreach and get more people to reach out to them for free, basically inbound leads. So that's what I have them do on a regular basis.
That makes perfect sense, man. That's very dialed in. Now, with this script, is it a full pitch, or are they just kind of bringing them in to get more of the SDRs or the account execs for their booking?
Yeah, so if they can get them interested in the full call, then I'll have them stay on for up to 15 minutes, just kind of qualifying someone further and trying to set up the sell for the account executive. But one thing I'm actually shifting towards, and this is actually something where I think we'll start to go into extreme hyper growth, is not just finding people from other countries who are very motivated and very skilled, but also finding people from other countries who can do more than just book the meetings, who can also close the deals. And we've actually just hired someone who we think will be able to do that. And that's going to be game changing for us, because we could pay this person super well. And by the way, super well in the Philippines, like where they're balling out, right? Like where they're making like a ton of money in the Philippines is like $3,000 per month, right? Like that's a lot of money in the Philippines. And we know because we go direct to people and we basically hire them directly. We don't go through middlemen or women. We go direct to them. And that's like making $10,000 to $12,000 per month here in the States. I mean, it's an extreme difference, right? So you can imagine we can pay someone, have them be super, super motivated, super happy, living the life they want to in their country. And our margins are extremely good because they're able to book meetings and close the meetings that they book without any inbound coming their way. So.
Wow, that's huge, man. I mean, even though, like you said, it's just common sense mindset, be able to bring that in. But like you said as well, being able to have that versatile individual, but they're hard to find, but they definitely are out there. Now, I know a lot of people leverage Upwork. I shouldn't say a lot of people. I know some of the lower end clients that that just push over 600,000 or 500,000. They still are leveraging Upwork and things like that. For those that are obviously one more of a professional BDR that's already kind of there, well established in skill set.
Yeah.
Where would you recommend them reaching out? I would imagine your agency, of course, because you that's your expertise. But where else would they be able to reach out?
Well, they can go to Twiz. If they're an agency, they can go to agencygo.io. And if they just want to stay tuned on my progress and in the business and learn about agency growth and scale or service scale, they can listen to my podcast, How to Scale an Agency, anywhere they get podcasts. Also, I do got to jump because I have to actually hop off on a meeting right now.
Right. Definitely. That's why I want to make sure you just guys, those links will actually be in the description below. So just from an experience perspective, I do know that his agency, if I would have been able to connect with them, they would have saved me hundreds upon hundreds of my time, as well as probably ridiculous amount of money on the front end. Obviously I scaled roughly 15 BDRs on the front end, the account exec. So but hey, Lucas, I really appreciate your time, man. I know we got to both jump off. If there's anything else you want to add, of course, just let us know. Those links will be in the description below. But other than that, man, appreciate your time, man.
All right. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.